What keeps you awake at night?
Sea levels are rising globally.
Fears fueled by horror stories.
Among the worst flu season in a decade, and it hasn't peaked yet.
We all know the atomic bomb is very dangerous.
Another series of deadly terror attacks.
Because you know that thing your brain does in the middle of the night? This crazy thing where it takes a small problem and it just makes it enormous?
I guess, what was it, maybe like 3 days ago? Yeah, it had to be 3 days ago because I didn't want to do my lab report, so we spent a good hour psychoanalyzing somebody that I'm friends with on Facebook that I really shouldn't be friends with. I should at least unfollow her because her posts are emotionally
Yeah, that's like
taxing.
half of the people I follow. I should just turn
Stop.
them off. Yeah.
And so this was the same person that I got into an argument, like, I think last episode about how we talked about, it was our last episode where we talked about it's hard for me to convince people to care about others.
Yeah.
Same one. And we were reading through her posts, which were so funny because they were so inflammatory. Like, she posts Facebook posts like an aunt who just got a Facebook and realized that she could post news articles. Like, so many capital words. Like, when the fuck do people use capitals?
Remind me, this person is like our age, right?
She's a little bit older than us.
I don't mean to interrupt, but you said aunt, and my European English brain went, what do you mean an aunt on Facebook?
What do you call aunts?
So you mean aunt.
Oh, fuck off. And so we were going through and we saw this video that was like, it was like some guy that said like my 5 favorite thing about Muslims, and Hassan, who grew up in Muslim communities, was like, I need to see this video.
Oh yeah. God.
And it had to be like the second point. I don't remember.
No, it was the very first.
Okay.
It starts off with him saying, he says, first of all, let me clarify who I am. I am an Israeli Jew, and I want to dispel all the misconceptions about Muslims. And then he starts off, he's like, my top 5 list is, and his very first point was, his favorite thing about Muslims is that they sit on the floor and eat food with their hands.
Which is so... my jaw drops. It's so, like, objectively racist.
Oh my God.
It's when you swing so hard to be apologetic that you hit the racist card.
Holy shit.
And then Hassan literally got off of the couch and just like sat on the floor and was like, I cannot believe that he just said that and people are sharing this as if it's like, which is like, what is the regularity of like people eating on the floor? You said it was
it's completely cultural. There's like the only time that I think Arabs on like nowadays sit on the floor and eat is only if they're going camping in the desert or something, or they want to or they have a super traditional family that nobody has anymore, really. Eating with your hands is rare. We have utensils. It's amazing what we do.
Forks and knives and shit?
Yeah, it's knives and shit, like actual knives. But oh god, it was so bad.
Also, the other thing that you said that I thought was hilarious is you're like, I think he's confusing the fact that there's certain dishes that you eat with bread, and he just assumes we eat with our hands.
Yeah, there's like if you have hummus or whatever, right? You just eat it with bread. You don't need utensils. And there's like certain meat dishes you just have bread because they're small chunks, so you pick them up with bread because you don't need utensils. But oh my god!
Do you remember the reason he said that they ate with their hands?
Because it's all about sharing, and there's one communal plate.
No. He said they eat with their hands to get closer to their food. Anyway.
Yeah, it was something else. It really was.
And like
like dogs do. What the fuck?
Yeah, the other reasons were like also so like broad, like
I don't even remember what they were because they were like
they could apply to like literally
person's
anyone.
Culture.
Yeah, they're like another thing I like about Muslims, they're nice.
They're family oriented.
Okay.
They're family oriented, because all other cultures they don't give a shit about their families.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I know that for a fact.
I can say from experience. Yeah.
Man, that's really bad.
Yeah.
It's
oh
horrible.
my god.
Yeah, so that's what an opener. And what an opener as we open. Oh, hey, you know what? I'm Olivia.
Oh, hi, I'm Brooke.
And I'm the guest star again, Hassan, also known as Stalinmate.
Woo!
Woo! Yeah, Stalinmate's back, baby.
I mean, I capped off last season's guest star host, and I'm this season's first guest star host.
Not to flex you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I'm special. It's okay.
Yeah, you are special, Hassan.
So today we're ending our series on modern slavery. Wow.
are.
Yeah, and I said this to Olivia before we started recording. Mine is gonna be very sad. It's very, very sad because, you know, your guys' there was always some form of something where you're like, oh, okay, I understand why people don't care, or I understand why it's a necessary evil, or it's still fucked up, but like,
Nope,
there
I'm
is a
still mad about
reasoning
mine.
behind it.
Nope, not even a
Not
little
reasoning,
bit.
I know, but like, for example, Olivia's was it's a consequence of capitalism, and
yes.
yours was it's criminal, so people for some reason don't care.
Right.
This is just straight up exploitation for no reason whatsoever.
Cool.
You know what he did last night? He looked at me and said, "Hey, how much did Brooke say the prisoners made? Like what? Like 25 cents an hour?" And I went, "I don't remember. I think it was like 30ish, like 30, 45." And
Yeah, I
he
think the
looked
low
up
bracket was like 24, but yeah.
Yeah. And so he looked up a conversion from British sterling to the US dollar, and he like showed it to me. He's like, "All right, so mine get paid like about the same." And I'm like, "Hassan, why is it in British sterling?" And he's like, "Well, that's where all the research is from." And I went, "Oh, no.
God.
Yeah, the BBC went very hard on the research for this. So I have to congratulate the BBC and a website called Migrant Rights, sorry,
Oh,
because they were very thorough.
Oh, God,
However,
I'm
they
so
were also
tense.
very like it's important because they did shine light, saying that most of the time these are very bad actors and you can't generalize it. Since really, the topic of today is, you'll see, since I did not want to pick a specific region. However, I ended up picking a specific region, which was the Middle East, because it is very easy to see how the law can get exploited there,
Okay.
even though it's not meant to be. And I am showing examples of US, China, and Britain because they all have similar laws that get exploited in the same way. However, the ones with the most extensive study is in the Middle East because they do it the most there. Again, these are specific companies and people who are exploiting these laws. So you can't generalize it to a region. You can't generalize it to the law. The law is bad. It has loopholes. That's why it's getting exploited. However, it's there kind of to protect people, which is the sad part.
My entire back is just rock solid right now. I can't move.
Okay, I will start off with Britain because the BBC has a lot of research and Britain is actually cracking down very hard.
What is it?
Everything has to do with the way the country runs its anti-slavery laws and how it runs immigrants and
no.
migrants. So most countries, when you are immigrating there, you're going to get a working visa, and the working visa is tied to your company. Now, most of the time, that's not an issue, right? Because that's the way the government's going to delegate its migrants to work, right? You don't want to basically micromanage every single migrant and micromanage every single company. You give the company here, this is the rule. You give them a visa, and as long as they're working for you, you make sure the visa is kept up.
Okay.
And that way, you basically ensure that each company takes care of its migrants, and they're held accountable for them.
Okay.
And every country does this. Britain does this, the US does this, China does this, the Middle East does this. They all have different laws, but ultimately they all try to accomplish the same thing, which is companies and businesses, even individuals, are accountable for the people they put to work, right?
Sure.
That's the logic behind it. And ultimately that's like a noble goal. Like you don't want people to get exploited, so you ensure that the people who are employing them are responsible for them and you keep them in check. But lazy bureaucracy, bad regulation, and people who find loopholes are really good at exploiting laws like that.
What? No.
As we have learned in this podcast.
Are you sure about that,
So-
Hassan? That can't be possible.
Rich people listen to the law.
They have very good lawyers who find ways to get around this, and they exploit really bad bureaucracy. So let's start with England, Britain. So there's 100,000 European migrants from Poland, Romania who go to work in the construction industry there.
Oh boy.
Well, turns out at least a third of them are not getting paid and are regularly beaten if they do anything. They experience verbal abuse, physical abuse, and the focus on labor exploitation found all of this. This was reported through Reuters, which is a large news agency in Europe. And that's essentially it. They refuse to pay them money. They refuse to give wages so that if the workers leave, they just don't get the money. You leave, you lost 2 months of salary, and you're on the streets, and you lose your visa, and now you're an illegal immigrant.
So, question. So they essentially withhold their wages for months and say, like, if you want your wages, you need to wait, and then give it to them and kind of, like, repeat this process.
They don't give it to them at all.
Never?
They just say you have to wait until next month, and they just don't do it.
Wait, they never pay them ever?
They ensure that at least 2 to 3 to 4 months of payments are not paid back. And then they'll pay in increments, or they will pay less of what is actually owed to them. They'll ensure that essentially they maximize as much profit as possible and withhold as much wage as possible to ensure they don't run away.
So wait a minute, hold on. You're telling me that antiquated immigration laws are directly causing human rights violations?
Yep.
What?
This is wild.
No way.
This is completely illegal. Completely illegal.
I'm sure
But
it
the
is.
problem is the Polish and Romanians who have moved to Britain at this time barely speak English, can't read the law, and when they complain, they get verbally abused or beaten or told that, no, this is completely legal and this is how Britain runs. So they have no idea that this is illegal.
You know, this is like so reminiscent of like all of the primary resources we read when we take like AP US history, and we have all of the like, what is it, the immigrants that come to the US and they're like, yeah, we're just like not gonna pay you, and they're like, well, I can't speak English. Like,
Yep, that's essentially it. And then, so 1 in 8 slavery cases in Britain are construction worker and heavy labor slavery cases.
Oh boy.
The United States does the exact same thing. They're called Silvery Towers in San Jose, and they're being built by something called Full Power Industries, which is a Chinese company. Now, the United States has cracked down on this company multiple times about these specific towers, and 22 workers have been paid $250,000 in missing wages.
That's a lot of missing wages.
Yeah, but however, what this company did was they used a contractor who hired illegal immigrants to work there.
Right, this is what you were
and
saying,
they're
Olivia.
kept in a...
That thing where like there are
Yeah.
so many different moving parts that you can never really trace it back to the company.
yeah, which is just, I'm gonna say it, deliberately evil.
Yeah.
It's deliberately evil. A man called Job Torres Hernandez is being prosecuted by the United States government for using illegal immigrants as forced labor, and they were kept in a warehouse in Hayward.
What?
Yep, they were just kept in the warehouse in Hayward in the Bay Area and forced to work without wages. They couldn't go to the police because they'd be deported. They couldn't go anywhere because they would be, deported since they're all illegal immigrants, and they can't complain because they'd just be beaten and verbally abused.
Oh my god. And you know, this is like, as an aside, we're talking about England, but I guess the UK.
This is the United States.
Okay,
Yeah, this
good.
is US. Yeah.
Yeah, because I
San
was gonna
Jose.
say, yeah, this is what they do in the South, which is like in the agricultural area.
Right.
Like they exploit illegal immigrants, which is so interesting that like lawmakers in these regional areas are so adamant that we need to deport people because they're taking jobs, but are also being funded by companies who exploit illegal immigrants to do the large majority. They live in like warehouses and like shanty towns like nearby, and as soon as there's issues, they're like, well, you know, you're an illegal immigrant, so we could just like fucking deport you. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's
Yep.
easy because there are so many people who are looking for work and can't get it. So like they can
Yeah.
just deport whoever they want if anybody raises hell, and
So there was a workers' strike at the Silvery Towers of 400 workers.
holy shit.
Remember, only 22 have been paid back. There's 400.
God.
And they're calling them slavery towers instead of silvery towers.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Which is, and a lot of the people were saying, I don't understand how people who live in San Jose are saying, I don't know how we can live by knowing that illegal immigrants are being used as slaves in building these towers. And honestly, well, it's horrible, but people aren't doing anything. So sitting on your high horse and saying, well, I don't know how this is going on. They can't do any. Like, these are illegal immigrants who can't oppose their workers. I don't know how you're being cruel to them, and I feel like that's evil on top of it.
Yeah, like sitting
Like,
sitting
it's
in
your
your,
fault
like,
that you're a slave, essentially.
Yeah, sitting in your McMansion eating Driscoll's strawberries saying, I just don't know how I can live with myself. Munch,
Yeah.
munch. Like, shut the
Munch,
fuck up.
munch, indeed.
It's horrible. And then we have China, which does something similar.
Okay.
They use migrant workers from their own rural areas and exploit them by doing the same thing that was going on in Britain, in the United States, by withholding wages again. And by essentially keeping them there by holding 4 to 5 months of wages. And that's how they keep them loyal.
How do they even like pay for food or rent if they don't have 4 to 5?
Yes. This is important.
Oh man.
All of these people are given food and housing by the companies that hire them.
Okay, yeah.
So
Housing
even
in
if
air
you did
quotes.
complain, you'll be homeless
Oh man.
because the person who hired you is giving you a house and food.
So is this like one of those situations where I think Brooke described too, where you're like making these like wages, like I guess I'm gonna call them artificial wages because you're not fucking getting them, and then all of your food is coming from like the store that the company provides, deducting it from your wages.
Yep.
And then so is your housing. So essentially, like they're quote unquote paying for your existence, but it's really just like coming out of your paycheck that you never receive.
Yes.
Love
Yes.
that.
Really good.
So, and it's like I said, all these, I could go into each one and describe how they're abusing migrant laws. And again, that would be each one of these would be an episode of their own. And I think it's better if I just pick one
Yeah.
and really drive it home because
man.
ultimately it's the same mechanism that works. It's the exact same one.
How many pages you got on your script about?
It's 2 and 800 words, but I know these because I picked the Middle East since I'm very familiar with that one.
Oh boy.
I don't really need the notes. I know what
That's
they do there.
Horrifying, Hassan.
Yes.
Oh,
So
jeez.
I picked the Middle East as the case study simply because the law, the Khalifa system, or also known as the sponsorship system, is very well studied
Okay.
and known. And again, like I said, all these laws, they're interchangeable essentially. There's obviously fine print and what constitutes as what is different. However, it's the same mechanism. Like it's the same form of exploitation and you'll hear it. So the Khalifa system is really important to know. And before starting this, the Khalifa system is a sponsorship system. Back in the Middle East when it's basically really cultural, right? And a lot of families hold a lot of power. They didn't want migrants to be, well, ironically exploited. So they created a system of support. If let's say I live in the Middle East and I have a large family and money and you want to work there, you can contact me and I will take you into my family essentially and I will be financially and legally responsible
Oh
for you.
fuck, I think I've heard of this.
Yeah. So as you come over, like if you commit a crime, basically I have to answer for it. And I have to ensure that you have money and I have to ensure that you have work so that you can, work in something that's essentially still very tribal based and very family oriented.
Why do I know this is supposed to sound great, but it just sounds like slavery.
It's gonna, yeah. So you see how very easily that can be
Yeah.
exploited?
Yeah, that's just
Yeah.
indentured servitude at that point.
No. Brooke. They're taking them into their family.
Oh,
Their family.
My mistake.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So when the system works correctly, it works well. Because again, they have all the rights that powerful family has, and then they have all the rights as a migrant, and they get the visa and everything. So when it works well. But as you clearly are very easy to see that can be exploited an insane amount, which it is. So really, when a migrant comes over, they don't know how to speak Arabic, and all the laws are in Arabic.
Great.
Good.
They specifically pick countries from poorer regions with low literacy rates so that even if they did come over and request a translated version, they can't read it.
Woof.
Yes, so most of the workers that are in the Middle East are from the Asian subcontinent of India, and which includes Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, that in general region. Now, they're heavily exploited. So you know how in the UK it was 100,000 Polish workers and about a third of them are being exploited. Here they can be up to 1.5 million people get employed by a single company, or you'll have multiple hundreds of thousands of people being employed. They're all under the same conditions. So major companies are known to very quickly exploit and very quickly and effectively enslave essentially hundreds of thousands of people.
Oh boy. Good.
Yeah. So
Let's just sit in
this
this
is how
for
this
a minute.
works. Yeah, this is the process. First, they have a person go out also as a contractor or an employee hirer.
Like a recruiter?
It's kind of like a recruiter, yeah. And they'll send them to the country of choice.
No.
Now, you would think that you go to this office and you request a job and then they're going to give you the job and ship you out. That sounds logical, right? They're out there to hire people. No, you pay this person to get a job.
But of course. Why wouldn't you?
Yes, and this is how this is really the first way that you can see how they will very quickly grasp the financial. Essentially, they buy the person through making them take a lot of loans.
Oh boy.
No.
So the poor worker, who's barely literate at this point, is listening to the recruiter who is reading the law to them or explaining it to them. The recruiter is telling them what they're allowed to do and their rights. So that's already problematic.
Are they lying?
Then they'll go.
Like, do they lie?
Of course they lie.
Of course they lie. Was that even a question? What a moron I am. God.
Oh, we're so many episodes in at this point. Why would you?
Why would I even ask?
I was like, when I was like, well, don't they have to legally disclose?
God, that was so
that? And
funny.
you're like, you, Olivia.
You're like, they can't destroy that evidence. That's illegal. And I was like, what?
Sorry.
Yeah, no, now I'm Boo Boo the fool, so it's fine.
How does the shoe fit, motherfucker?
Too well, unfortunately. Alright, so they lie.
So the recruiter will lie to them,
Yeah.
tell them that they have certain rights that they don't have, or explain to them what the conditions are. They'll usually say that they'll be paid X amount, which is not true. They'll tell them that they're going to be offered housing, which is true, but they're not going to be offered housing that they tell them. They'll usually say that they'll be given an apartment and they'll be given food, and they'll tell them that they'll get a certain amount of money, which is enough to pay off the loan that they took to pay the recruiter.
Now, I think it's hilarious a little bit that they're like, you're going to get an apartment, you're going to have money. Like, it's just like, I imagine the shock, and like you come over and they're like, yep, here's your apartment. And they just like open like a rusting door of a warehouse. And they're like,
you'd wish it's a rusting door of a warehouse.
oh,
Hassan, what the fuck?
I told you, this is just pure evil. There's nothing here that is
What,
at
do they
all.
fucking put them in tents?
They put them in sheet metal shacks where the sewage usually overflows, and they have rocks that they use to hop between to get to their shacks without touching sewage. That is essentially a common occurrence.
So essentially a New York apartment.
Fuck off.
With 12 people inside. With 12 people inside each shack.
This is... okay.
Okay.
Not okay. What?
I mean, I am kind of wishing it is the rusting
Yeah.
door of a warehouse now, I guess. So
I feel like a warehouse is preferable. Yeah.
yeah. Well, might be. So I guess you're right again.
It's gonna get pretty bad in a second. So
You're so in joy of bumming us out.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Just the prepping is. Oh man, we don't do this. Hassan's just evil about it. Ugh.
Yeah. Sounds like he's been telling me all week. He's like, dude, this one's gonna fuck you up so bad. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, yeah, because it's so bad.
It's so evil. It's just pure evil. That's the problem. There's genuinely a moment where I'm like, all right, I see all the little working processes. And once I get to that point where I'll show you the way that they exploit them and essentially hold their finances and their family hostage over them,
Huh?
you'll see how, you'll understand. Like, I'll almost walk you through the mechanism just because I want you to see how evil it is, not because I don't think you guys can put it together in your own heads. I just want to say it.
For your own sanity.
It's
Yes,
cathartic.
it's just so purely evil.
Jesus.
So they take out these massive loans
Right.
to pay the recruiter, and the loans can be up to 36% interest rates.
What?
Okay. What?
What the fuck?
Yes. And then they get, and they usually do this by either mortgaging out their family home, taking loans directly from a bank that is tied to their family name. Yep. And then they get shipped out, leaving their wives and family behind to go 6 to 8 hours across the world to a country that is basically in the middle of a desert at 50 degrees Celsius to work, which is 120 degrees Fahrenheit.
Thank you. Did you see that was my first
Yeah,
fucking
of course.
question? Sorry.
Yes, and once they land, they're greeted by a bus that shuffles them in, drives them to one of the shanty towns that I was talking about, which is essentially just a collection of buildings where 12 people sleep in one room that are built with sheet metal
So there's
In
no
a desert.
insulation.
in a desert.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So like each of those little shanties probably gets upwards of like 150 degrees in the sun.
Yep.
Also,
there's sewage
it
on the
gets super
floor.
cold,
At
right?
night, it gets super cold at night.
Yeah.
So, and it gets even more fucked up because all the buses, they get shipped out that are at least 50 to 40 miles out of the city.
No.
So that means the tourists that visit don't even know they exist.
Woof.
And they're in the middle of the desert, so you wouldn't even, like, even if you'd have to know where they are to find them.
That's so fucked
Holy
up.
Jesus.
Once they enter, they get told who their sponsor is. Now you're like, all right, they have a sponsor. Somebody's going to be held legally responsible.
No.
Well, do you want to know how many rights the sponsor has?
Oh.
If you sign up for a sponsor, you are legally not allowed to quit without their permission. Legally not allowed to leave and join a different job without their permission. Legally not allowed to leave the country in certain countries without their permission. Most of the time, they're not allowed to leave the country without the sponsor's permission. It gets kind of iffy. Like, I know the United Arab Emirates, they don't really care that much. Like, you can leave, but usually coming back will be difficult because they'll cancel their visa.
Oh.
But I know Saudi Arabia and Qatar, you actually need a written permission slip at the airport to
Holy
leave.
fuck.
So, like, literally slavery, right?
It's literally slavery, yes. This is how they ensure that they don't run away. They get their visa through their sponsor. Without the sponsor, they lose their visas and they'll get deported and have to pay overstay charges.
Oh god.
So they have to pay overstay charges.
But they already have these loans.
They're not getting yeah.
The 30% interest loans that they definitely can pay off.
Then they have to also pay back the loans at home with the bare minimum that they're getting paid. Would you like to hear how much they get paid on average?
No.
Brooke.
Well, you're hearing it anyways. The average salaries are often no more than $155.95 a month, which translates to about 39 cents an hour.
Oh boy.
They're trying to pay off 36% interest loans on $155 a month.
And of course they don't know that.
That's if they don't eat, don't do anything,
Right.
they just purely use the money to pay off loans.
Right, because they're almost certainly being charged out the nose for their food and lodging. So like,
That's if they no, the lodging and food is being supplied by the sponsor graciously. Did you forget that?
Oh, right. Have they... What is this? This goes back to the people thinking, why don't they just leave?
Why don't they
Like,
just leave?
why don't they
not how
just
that
leave?
works.
Oh boy.
Is this the same system where the sponsor takes their passport, or...
Okay, so that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
If people get upset, well, this is how they keep control of them. A, they can lose their visas.
Okay.
B, they also withhold at least 1 to 2 months of salary, which they get supposedly at the end of them working there. Yes.
Oh, how long
when
are
will
their
they ever stop
contracts?
working for you?
Never?
Yep.
Ah.
Alright. Now, I think the only reason I'm familiar with this is there was a beauty guru in the Middle East, and she was chosen to be, I can't remember if it was like Neutrogena, but it was some kind of like international, like American-based company. They were going to use her image as like the new face of Neutrogena. And then a video of her came out on Snapchat. She went on a whole rant about the use of, I think she was in Qatar. So
Qatar and Saudi Arabia are the worst.
Yeah.
We do this.
Yeah, so I believe it was Qatar. I could be wrong. And she went on a long Snapchat rant in defense about her having slaves, which she didn't call slaves, but
It's slavery.
slaves.
Yeah.
And she made the argument that it's completely justified to take their visas from them and their passports because it's like insurance. And she's like, I'd be losing an investment if they just had their passports and they had the ability to leave. Just referring to these human beings as like physical like entities and investments.
They're like amenities for her. Holy shit.
Yeah. And she was like immediately dropped from this campaign, and they did not associate with her. They said that her statements are not like consistent with the company's beliefs and everything like that. But that was the first time I'd ever heard of this, and that's kind of the mentality that I'm sure a lot of these people have of like, well, if they leave, then I lose money. And it's like...
Yeah, the only time I've ever heard of this was there's a blogger, she goes by Sixpence, and she like posts horror shit, I guess, like scary short stories and content like that. And it came out that her family, they don't run a corporation, but her family sponsors a child who is their slave. And people found this out, and she was like, no, they're not. She's not our slave. She's like a part of the family, except she just does everything for us and doesn't get paid.
Huh?
Yeah. And people are like, oh, so a slave you mean? Like, the logic there just doesn't connect. Like, it's just slavery. But these people are like, no, they're not slaves. They just can't leave and don't get paid and work all day.
So slaves.
So slaves.
Like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's really, it's very cruel. And then this is the passport thing that Olivia
Right.
said. Yeah. Passport taking is illegal in all of these countries.
okay.
Remember when I said bad bureaucracy is really the reason why nothing gets done?
Yeah.
If they take their passport and you complain, what usually the bureaucracy will do is they'll call the boss and say, hey, give him his passport back.
No. Hangs up.
Or they just say yes and then don't do it. Like, Jesus H. Christ. What is happening here?
It's just slavery. And here's the thing. Why would... this is the fucked up part. The government doesn't mind this because it's cheap labor that builds cities for them.
Yeah.
So that's the issue.
Right, so like,
They don't even...
they're not
They
human.
won't crack down on it because it helps them out.
Yeah.
Is this in any way? I remember when they were constructing the arena in Qatar for the World Cup. I believe. Do you have that?
I have... This is all about that.
God.
All right, so we'll save that.
We'll get there. We will get there.
No.
I just saw a big paragraph that we're going to be hitting in maybe 20 minutes. Continue.
So there's the shanty towns are being they live in shanty towns. They barely speak the language. They are getting paid next to nothing. They're riddled with debt. They don't know how to read the law. They don't know how to interpret the law. They don't know what their rights are at all. So they just sit there and live with it, and which is the horrible, horrible thing. I have some excerpts from what people have said. So the first one is from a Gul Nawaz, who was considered a runaway.
Oh.
Now he asked his boss to switch jobs because he wanted to work in a different company. The boss said yes, but you have to pay me $5,300.
What?
He took out a loan and did it. He went to the next company and they said, we can't hire you because your boss hasn't given permission for you to leave. He called his ex-boss again, and the boss said, oh no, you have to pay me another $5,300, which he did.
No.
And then he was still considered a runaway because he's not working for his ex-boss. He did it a third time, and this time the boss said, oh, just give me your visa, your passport, and pay me another $5,300, and I'll let you go. Which he did.
Oh my God.
Again. And this time the boss now stops answering his phone calls.
No.
and he let his visa run out. And this is an excerpt of what he said the day his visa ran out, because he went to a news agency and said his story, which is, "Today my status is that I have become illegal through no fault of my own. I cannot move anywhere and cannot work. I have been without work for a year. I have not been able to spend money to my family for a long time. I'm the only breadwinner in my family. I have paid huge amounts to my sponsor, and I have borrowed from many friends, slept hungry many nights."
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
It's
I don't even know
really,
I don't know what to say. Like, it's...
All right.
it's quite evil. That's one story of many, obviously.
And none of this was
happens-
necessary. Like, no work was getting done. He just wanted... What, more money? Like, why? What is...
He just wanted to go to a different company. He didn't even ask for more money.
No, I'm talking about, like, the original boss. Like...
Oh, yeah.
There was no win here, except for, like pretty small, comparatively, increments of money. And then no work was getting done, and then, like, he couldn't leave, and there's no reason for this except I want to fuck with someone else. Like...
There's no rhyme or reason for what he did. And honestly, the thing is, this poor man, he spent so much money at this point, there's no way he can even go through a legal process of working his way to freedom.
Right,
so
of
he's
course
going to be
not.
stuck in that country as an illegal immigrant, probably homeless for the rest of his life.
And that's if he doesn't get found and deported, right? Like, I'm sure
Right.
Hell, they'd probably put him in jail first because he can't pay the overstay fees.
Okay. I love criminalizing poverty.
Yeah, isn't that great and good and right? This
Well,
is moral.
Why don't we just put them somewhere else? I'm sorry. Call back to an old episode. So you would like to continue?
There is another case that I'd like to bring up, also in Qatar. The other one was in Saudi Arabia.
yeah.
This one is in Qatar.
This
Now,
might as well happen.
Might as well jump around.
So this company is one of the largest building companies ever, and people really enjoyed working for them. Like, he had employees that worked for him for 40, 50 years, and they genuinely enjoyed working for him. Like, he gave them good sanitation. All their houses had air conditioning units. They had good latrines. They got food. They never complained, and they really didn't. Like, even in their words, they didn't need to. However, the owner
Okay.
died.
Oh, God.
And then his shares went to his son
No.
and to the primary shareholder. So the primary shareholder then gave legal rights of attorney to the son, which essentially just means that whatever the shareholders' stakes are in the company, be they 20%, the son essentially gets voting rights with those.
Right.
And then the son liquidated the company and closed it down and never
Oh.
paid the fees and wages that are left to the workers. And he just left them there, and all their visas ran out, and now they're all technically illegal, and they can't leave the building because they will get arrested and deported or put in jail for overstay fees. So, like, even when the system works very well, all it takes is a change of owner for them to essentially lose all their rights.
Man, there's so much instability in that. You know?
Right. Oh, my God.
Yeah,
Hooey.
and that's an example of when the system worked well, they just got screwed over by basically an asshole, which is what this whole thing is about. Really, every time when something does go wrong. We've talked about how they stay, we've talked about why they stay, and we've talked about, like, essentially the methodology of it, and this is really what I wanted to say, where I wanted to spell it out, why these people can't leave, so there really is no way of somebody saying, well, why don't they just leave, or why don't they just do this, or why don't they purposefully get deported, right? All these things. Well, remember how at the very beginning I said most of the people took large personal loans that are on their family's name?
I knew that was going to come
Or
back
they took the loans through mortgaging their house.
Yeah.
Well, if these people did stop working or did get deported and they can't pay these loans back, the ones who are going to take the brunt of this are their families. It's not going to be them.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I had a feeling when you said they took loans on their family home and name, I was like, ooh, culturally, I feel like we're going to come back to that.
They would rather be
Yeah.
homeless themselves than have their families lose everything, right? They wouldn't
Right, of
want their
course.
wives and children. And as he said before, he's the only breadwinner in the family, which is usually the case with most of these people. They send all the money back home. And they would lose their house, they would lose their family's name, they'd lose everything if they did go back. So they can't go back. They physically can't. They'd lose everything even more. So essentially their families are being held hostage on top of them. And whenever they do talk to their families, because they will send back whatever they can, some people will even take loans in the countries they are in to send back money. So they're even more in debt. And on top of that, it's like they will tell their families that everything is fine here and it's essentially a wonderland.
No.
So really, if you want to... Hell, the best way to describe this is if you want to create a fantasy world, people are going to have to be exploited. That's really what this is.
Yeah.
All these things are gems of the Middle East, or even like Las Vegas or other high-rise cities that all do this. Every single country essentially does this.
Yeah.
They're all gems of whatever. Or look at this magnificent building. Well, you kind of know how that got there because that's
Wasn't
the
Trump
only way
Tower,
that's
like...
profitable.
Yeah, wasn't Trump Tower exclusively built by illegal immigrants?
Essentially.
Yeah.
I would believe it.
And-
Yeah.
So that's what's really messed up here. It's exploitation for the sake of exploitation. There's nothing here other than that. And Olivia brought up Qatar, which is really currently in the news and headlights because, news lines everywhere because they got voted for the FIFA World Cup.
Which is
is
apparently a big deal.
Everywhere,
Not here
yes.
so much, but yeah.
It's a huge deal. Like you'll have influxes of millions of tourists all at once.
Yeah.
And what does Qatar do? They are constructing a city. Not hotels, not a number of hotels, and not like, oh, here's going to be a bunch of stadiums. No, they're constructing an entire city called Lusail. If you Google it, you will see it says under construction, planned population 250,000 people.
Oh God.
Have you ever heard of constructing an empty city?
No. That's
this
insane.
is genuinely what a lot of companies in the Middle East and Gulf region will do because they'll get a lot of subsidies from the government to build, large towers. So they'll build ghost cities. These are famous. Like all of them have ghost cities. Everybody knows about the ghost cities. It's like maybe they'll be constructed for 250,000 people and max like 10,000 people will live there sometimes.
Is it just like a tourist hub, like
It's
purposefully?
not even a tourist hub. It's just there for them to throw money at.
What?
Man, that's...
And of course it gives you pretty pictures so tourists will come to see the city they won't live there. They won't even have proper hotels because they'll all be in the main central city hub. But they're like, oh, look at this beautiful place.
Which is beautiful as a result of like nobody being there. Like the more people live in an area, like inevitably it's going to get a little more run down. So they just create these like essentially like Instagrammable cities for you to take pictures of and visit, never stay, get money thrown at it, and that's really it. They don't need anything else.
And this is what people are being used for to build, right? They're construction workers. So we'll talk about Lusail City because this is really messed up. While they were constructing the city, at one point they had a death every single day.
Okay.
44 people died between June 4th and August 8th. They died of heat stroke, heart attacks, and construction-related injuries, such as cranes that decided to shoddily constructed cranes that dropped their payloads on people, falling off buildings because of shitty safeties, really in general, that kind of procedure. Yeah, every single day, at one point, from June 8th to August 4th, 44 people died.
I'm sorry, but like, all this in the name of a city that no one's gonna live in.
Yep, and it's going to host the FIFA World Cup final.
Which year? This year?
No, in 2022. They haven't even started construction of the stadiums, which was the only reason that people found this out, because the primary, I can't remember what the company is that FIFA hires to build the stadiums. It's usually a mix of them, but this one is an English company, and they, inquired like, hey, so how's the stadium construction going? And then they said, oh, we haven't started yet. And then the English company's like, well, we need to hurry this up because the World Cup will be in it's less than 3 years now. Yeah. So they flew over and they saw what's going on and they were rightfully pissed off.
Sure.
And
You know what? Actually, you know what? I am surprised that they were pissed off. That actually shocks me.
That's
well,
fair.
Well, you know, actually, you're going to be more shocked because
Stop.
the World Cup is still being held in Qatar, even though all
Oh
this
my
is going
god,
on.
I thought there was like a huge thing where they didn't want to hold it there
They
anymore.
didn't, but it's still going there.
Wow.
And
So
like there'll be like a big boycott the Qatar World Cup, but people are still gonna fucking go because soccer,
Yeah.
I guess, is more important.
Yep.
I'm sorry, football. Please don't
Well, it
come at
doesn't
me.
matter. It's up to you guys what you want to call it, but
Yay, it's up to us.
the issue really at hand is just they're like, all right, what is it gonna take to finish construction of everything? The English company has decided to completely take over the construction of the buildings of the stadiums now. But to complete the infrastructure and the buildings and everything all put together, Qatar is looking to hire up to 1.5 million more workers.
Oh my god.
So far, from the 100, because this is really the Nepalese embassy are the ones that are reporting all this because they got angry about the 44 deaths, and they
Sure.
said at this point it's been 100,000 Nepalese people who have migrated there to work.
Oh god.
So it's at least 100,000 just from Nepal, excluding Indians and Pakistanis and Bangladeshis. It's just the Nepalese. There's 100,000 of them that are being heavily exploited. They're working in 122 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures. They don't have access to drinking water.
Oh, good.
The average living conditions that they are currently facing are, well, not just them. This is just the average living conditions that workers in that region are facing are, again, living in sheet metal shacks. Their food consists of potatoes, lentils, and bread.
Not a balanced
That's
diet.
not enough.
And here are some excerpts from what they are saying themselves from reporters from the BBC, who, again, very brave. They these countries are very quick to deport reporters or imprison reporters if they're their own. They don't like reporting against economy or anything
Sure.
that defames them. And these reporters did hide among them and managed to get very good interviews, all with anonymity of the workers, obviously, because that'd be horrible if they gave the names.
Right.
Now, here are some excerpts. They said, "We'd like to leave, but the company won't let us. I'm angry about how this company is treating us, but we're helpless. I regret coming here, but what to do? We're compelled to just make a living. We have no luck." Another one said this. Actually, this one he gave his name. His name is Ram Kumar Mhara, and he's 27. He said,
Jesus.
"We are working on empty stomachs for 24 hours, 12-hour workdays, and no food at night. When I complain, my manager assaults me, kicked me out of the labor camp, and refused to pay me anything. I had to beg food from other workers just to stay alive." All of their passports and visas are taken by the company to be revoked at any given moment when they complain. They basically have nothing. There's multiple pictures that you can see on antislavery.org of their conditions.
It's horrible.
They all wear the same jumpsuit and they have bandanas on because they're in the desert and there's high winds and sand, which will destroy your lungs.
Right.
They're basically out in the sun all day. It's 50 degrees Celsius, which is 120 degrees Fahrenheit. I just want to repeat that. You dehydrate
12 hours a day.
instantaneously in that weather. I think
Yeah.
there's been multiple studies that show without drinking water, you'll reach critical dehydration levels in under an hour. So that's just Qatar and their whole Sail City business. However, again, this runs deep. This is everywhere.
Right.
This is in general. The thing is, I'm only focusing construction workers. However, this also spreads to other things. Like they have maids that are under the same system.
Right.
And again, they can't leave. They live in the houses of the people who hire them, so they even live there. You can't escape. The problem is this extreme amount of exploitation leads to a lot of crime because they can't.
Right.
I mean, what are you gonna do? So they also have they get a bad rep essentially. They're like, oh, these are all criminals sometimes, or people won't associate with them or don't want to help because they think they're criminals on top of it.
Oh, it's just so fucked up.
So on top of
Yeah, that's
just
such an
being
easy.
exploited.
It's such an easy cop out. Like,
Yeah.
I don't need to care about these people because they stole something once. It's like, no, you just don't want to deal with your feelings about this. Like, come on.
Yeah. Jeez.
Dude. I think
That's
the
how
thing that
this
just
works.
is fucking me up is that, like, one of the things is that they're sending these letters to their family, right? And they have to paint this picture, like, through rose-colored glass of their living and working conditions. Like, it's great, everything is fine, don't worry about me. And so other people will see those letters, or people who are down on their luck will be like, oh, this is an option for me, and the conditions are so great, and will actually actively seek these positions, right? Because there's no information.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude!
Yeah. Damn. Yeah, this whole ugh, my goodness. I guess we could talk about what keeps us up at night about this, because I have much to say, and I'm sure we have a lot to unpack. I'll go first. This was a whole thing that I learned about in my history of neoliberalism. There was the book that we had to read. We are all fast food workers now, and I had to do a series of readings on essentially like not hospitality workers, I guess like maintenance staff for like hotels and everything. And they are currently like petitioning everywhere for, higher pay, for I guess more people to get hired, because like imagine like cleaning your own apartment, how many hours that takes. Like, me, realistically, like cleaning my whole apartment, at least an hour, and I'm exhausted
for me it's like
afterward.
2.
Yeah.
If I'm doing it by myself.
Yeah. So these workers are being expected to clean 6 to 8 rooms a day, bare minimum, which like they have to do super well because it's a hotel.
Yeah, they gotta deep clean it every time, which
And-
I don't do. So
Right. And just like the physical agony this is causing, like they don't have the money to go to doctors, they have chronic back pain and arthritis, and are constantly inhaling hazardous chemicals, right, cleaning solutions in close contact for like 8+ hours a day. And it is generally a trend that these are immigrants being neglected and overworked and everything like that, with similar loopholes. And these were the stories they were telling were both in the Middle East and the US. At least it seems very common there, because the hospitality industry is very, very critical in the Middle East, just as much as it is in the US. And it's that same repeat phenomenon of there was a big protest in, I believe, the US, where the employees were protesting and picketing and saying that we need better pay, we need more protections. And what the companies did was contract out work from a different labor company that was going to have more immigrants. And when you contract through a contracting company, you're no longer liable for the workers, because you're not hiring the workers, you're hiring through the contracting company, who they themselves are kind of reliable for the workers. But if you have illegal immigrants being hired, I really don't know how much they care.
they
Right.
don't.
So it's just like a more displacement of blame, and it's harder to get to the root of the issue, pursue legal rights, if really there's no information on who these people are, and you have no avenue to actively punish the hospitality companies that are doing this. So you focused on construction, but again, it's that similar system of exploiting people in a way that excuses you from blame. And the reason why this keeps me up at night and fucks me up so much is this system that Hassan has described today applies to construction, applies to hospitality, applies to food service,
Textile work.
like everything. Like, it was just a good
Any
recap.
manufacturing job. Yeah, it's everywhere.
And it just fucks me up, because like it's almost unavoidable. Like, if you want to stay at a hotel, that's gonna be what it is. Sorry about it, unless you can afford to stay at like a little Airbnb or like something close and intimate, maybe excuses you from partaking in I guess, an activity that promotes modern slavery. Like, what are you going to do about clothes? Like, you need to eat food. It's almost like an inevitability of living in comfort. Like, comfort only exists at the expense of other human beings' lives.
Because there's no what? No ethical consumption under capitalism.
That's your fucking brand. Are you getting a chest tattoo of that?
God, I'm gonna, like, just fucking print Marx's face on my bicep.
Yeah, just flexing Marx at all times.
Oh, God.
And this, I think, affected me the most during that class, because when I became aware of just the conditions, and this extends to you as well, Brooke, because you go to a UC.
Sure do.
In the UC system, they do pay workers significantly less than they should for what they do. Mm-hmm. At least I've noticed, because I'm kind of a late night studier. All of the cleaning occurs late at night. Yep. When nobody's there, so the workers aren't seen. And then when we go to the dining halls, and Hassan sees it as well, you have like the open kitchen style format with like maybe 1 or 2 people in the kitchen, and people like that open like kitchen style. It makes you feel like you're like fancy, and you're in like an area where they're catering to you. But when you drop off your silverware and utensils, there's a big rotating metal.
Yeah,
like,
we have the same thing.
Right? And if you look behind the conveyor belt, you just see rows of people cleaning and doing dishes and doing the backup prep work that are just, you don't want to see that. You want to see a cute, intimate kitchen making you chicken sandwiches. You don't want to see that there's like a dozen people in the back being overworked and underpaid. I think I mentioned this in another episode, but I found this out when I was taking this class during the fires that we had in LA, which had affected and I don't believe our classes got canceled, but
which was
LA
fucking
doesn't care
heinous.
about fires.
Yeah,
that was like a joke of the I took a natural disasters class, which says UCLA doesn't care about fires. Is the reason we have gas masks.
Right. So we weren't required to evacuate or anything, but there was a fire a few years prior that you could see from UCLA. Woo. And there was a period where they advised people to not go outside, but workers were still required to show up to work and work, even though they were advised to, like, everybody else was advised to leave except for them.
Yeah, there's a UC workers strike, I feel like, every other month.
Yeah, and
rightfully fucking so.
Yeah, they're like the fact that they were like, students, you should probably stay inside today. The air quality is pretty bad. But you need to make sure that you're providing them food and that you take out the trash.
Oh, never mind that. The people who like do the landscaping had to go.
Yeah, they go, and all the cleaning happens like early morning. Like there are times when I go to the gym at like 6 a.m, and that's when they're all out like cleaning and sweeping. And then the moment it's a heavily populated time, they just disappear. You don't see the cleaning staff like anywhere. Like it's just like this open sea, and you don't think about it until somebody points it out. Like, how often are you on campus and you notice people taking care of things for you? Like in the gym, there's a sign that says cleaning occurs from 3 to 5 in the morning. Ugh. Just people don't want to see it. They don't want to be inconvenienced. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to look at it. And that just all ties into this system where people enjoy affluence. They enjoy feeling taken care of. They enjoy nice food and nice dining halls and fancy hotels and casinos, but they don't really want to think about what it takes to make that happen. And so the system both exists, and at the same time a significant amount of energy is put into making sure that nobody knows it exists. Like you said, all of these workers live outside of the city or in regions of the city nobody goes to. Like, you have to know where to find them, which is deliberate.
And I've also showed some satellite images to Olivia the other day about some of the areas, and you can really see the difference. They're horrible. And it's quite fun. I already told him, like, hey, do you see how there's roads here? And then she's like, yeah. And then like there's buildings here, roads here, and then you see a giant wall. And right behind it is a collection of buildings or shacks or whatever. And in between, there's no street roads, but there's a lot of open space because there's no cars allowed in there. So you can, it's just like giant walking paths. Yeah. And that's and maybe like a drop-off system where the buses go.
It's just this
Holy shit.
big open secret built upon this idea that I want to feel high and mighty about, oh, like, how can I live with this? But I also never want to think about it. And I'm not going to do anything about it. And it just... there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. We are all Karl Marx.
We are.
Brooke?
Yeah. I'll just take the wheel then.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing, actually. And I was talking to Christian about this not too long ago. That, like, every time we purchase a luxury, I feel bad now.
Yeah.
Which means nothing. Like, my feeling bad does nothing for anyone and accomplishes nothing. But, like, I'm not rich by any means. I have a job which puts me above a lot of people, just financially speaking. But I'm not wealthy. I'm not well off. That being said, I can afford to go out to dinner. I can afford to buy, I don't know, a lamp from fucking Costco. I don't know. I can buy things now and then, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that I think keeps me up at night is that I can do these things where there is a part of the world where I'm sitting right now in a walk-in closet recording a podcast in my free time.
Yeah.
While people at this very same moment are sleeping in huts, shacks, shanties, whatever you want to call them, with sewage on the floor.
Yeah.
In what is probably below 0 temperatures. That blows my mind. I can't quantify that in my head, that can happen simultaneously, that the gap can be so wide.
Yeah.
And, like, oh, I complained that I didn't have any hot water this morning. Like, fuck you, earlier Brooke. Like, what are you talking about?
Goes back in time and punches yourself in the face.
Basically, and, like, the thing that is so upsetting about the whole thing is, what the fuck can I do about it? Like, I can spread awareness, which does very little. Like, obviously, the more people that are aware and outraged by what's going on, the more something could happen. But then it goes back to the thing that we talked about in Olivia's episode, which is, what happens when we boycott X company and these people just don't have jobs anymore? Like, they're still kind of shit out of luck if they don't have this work. And obviously the answer to the question is, like, the work needs to be ethical. Like, we can have this system and still have people, like, live functional lives, so long as the managers and the company owners aren't exploiting their labor. Like, they can exist simultaneously, but it just doesn't happen for some reason because people like being dickheads, I guess.
And I guess it also comes down to the fact, in order to establish some kind of global equality, who I'm going to say, even though I'm recording underneath a table, am living in comparable affluence. Right?
Exactly.
And in order to create equality, people who enjoy luxuries, such as me, I'm not exempt from this, have to make concessions that there is going to be more moments of discomfort. There's going to be less spending, which just, I don't, like, I'll say, which makes me kind of bummed, and I don't want, because instinctively we've been raised in this society where we're told that your ability to consume is proportional to your happiness, and the idea that, oh, you have to eat out maybe like once a week tops, you have to stop buying things. Why buy clothes often? You're like, but I want those things, you know?
Yeah.
Just think of, like, living conditions. Even if you're looking for an apartment, you're like, oh, nothing below 900 square feet.
I'm sorry. I saw a silverfish. That's not gonna happen. No.
Right? Like, and you know, same, like, I'm living in it, like, well, my apartment, I have mixed feelings about my apartment, and I will have that discussion when I get my $6 of my deposit back. But even then, I have hot water, I have operational sewage, I have a bathroom.
You have a bed?
Like, I have a bed on a, like, not just a fucking mat, like, and And if somebody said to me, like, okay, if I told you that if you made the switch from the living conditions that you're in to a shithole studio apartment that really only fits the bare essentials, and it would give even just one person improved living conditions in a home in another country, like, that's a tough choice for me. Like,
right.
and to say it's not is disingenuous, right? And that would be a difficult choice, I think, for anybody to make, especially, and this is the most critical part here, as far as our participation in this unethical consumption. I think the people who are the most contributive to this system are the people with the most spending power, which is
right.
not us. So you're not convincing me to downscale my living size. You're convincing somebody who regularly stays in these expensive hotels, who buys clothing like every other month, who...
Dude, yeah, that was like when fucking, like, the Beverly Hills Hotel or something, there was some big scandal, and people are like, boycott the Beverly Hills Hotel, and I was like, cool, done, I guess?
Been boycotting them all my life.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that list
done.
came out because I think it's like some kind of, I think it's the king of something that where he legalized stoning gay people to death.
Yes.
And they're like, here's the list of hotels he owns, and I went, well, I guess my trip to Paris is canceled. Like, you know,
like, stuff like that. Yes, but the other thing is that they own Shell Oil, so don't get your stuff from Shell.
I don't think I do. So...
Me neither, because it's like wildly more expensive than all the other places. So still too rich for my blood,
right?
But,
and so that's what's like.
We're talking
like,
about
millionaires. Imagine looking Elon Musk in the face and saying, "Are you willing to downscale from a McMansion and traveling every other day to living in a 1,200 square foot apartment," which is huge still.
That's massive,
right?
Yes.
But 1,200 square feet, you have a car that's like an average.
You have like a nice car,
right?
Yeah.
Would he do it?
No, he wouldn't.
No, and most
Which
people
is
who
just, I like, this is, you started to build to it, and this is sort of the thing, is that there's just no such thing as a moral billionaire, period. No. Like, people have tried to argue this with me, and they can't because they're wrong. You can't be a billionaire. I'm sorry. I'll say it.
Love that.
Fucking fight me. You can't be a billionaire and not be living on the backs of other people. When that money could be used to not just change somebody's life, but to improve drastically hundreds upon thousands of people's lives. There is no reason why you should be sitting on that wealth, not doing anything with it.
Yeah.
There's just no reason for it. And like Jeff fucking Bezos, we know how much I love Jeff. He donated, I think it was 10 million or 10 billion. I think it was 10 million.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. It was one or the other. But whatever it was the largest charitable donation of all time.
Yeah.
It was like 0.25% of his total wealth.
Yeah.
That's like me going to the bank and like picking out $10 and donating it to fucking Ronald McDonald House. Like, that's the equivalent of that. And
right.
it's just
I think the only like billionaire I can think of that I have like any is Bill Gates.
Right. Yes.
Bill and Melinda Gates fucking.
I mean, they already pledged. Actually,
yeah, no, they signed.
Even Warren Buffett, who was a dick.
Oh yeah, Warren Buffett.
But even Warren Buffett is like, I think 99% of his wealth is already given to charity the moment he dies.
Oh yeah,
yes.
it's Bill Gates had created a foundation where millionaires and billionaires pledge that I think literally more than half, like the large majority of their wealth, will be donated to charity within their life. Like they say and then upon their death, most of it's gone. So like that's the only concession that I can make. Like, those people actively doing stuff like that, but then, like, I don't know, man. You see, like, Jeffree Star has a vault that has several $1 million worth of purses in it, and I'm like...
he never uses them! Ever! And it's like, why? You could sell those, or fuck, I don't know, hold an auction, which would just be crazy because he would get way more than asking price for those, because he owned them. Hold an auction off all of the shit that you never look at, never mind use, and you could donate that money to, like, fucking, I don't know, cancer research or something?
Fucking, I don't know.
Just off the top of my head. Like,
I mean, like,
My favorite thing with those extreme wealth products that a lot of people own is whenever you can YouTube or Google
yeah.
one-of-a-kind cars that exist only in the Gulf states. Like, there is certain cars that are built by Pagani, which is a huge Italian car manufacturer. There's only, like, 3 of them that they're hand-built for a specific person.
Oh my God.
And those cars can be up in the, like...
priceless.
We don't even know what the price is.
Yeah,
They're
you can't
essentially
price them.
priceless at this
Yeah.
point. It's like, if he wants to sell it, they don't even know what to start the auction at.
Okay.
Like, that's how ridiculously expensive these things can get. And they own them, and they show them once or twice in a car show, and then they go into their personal garage, never to be seen again.
Insane.
and like the charities aside, my bigger issue is if you look at somebody like Jeff Bezos, who Amazon workers are constantly complaining about being overworked and underpaid. If he just fucking halved his wealth, which he could and still be fine, and reallocated it to increasing the wages of his workers, which he's unwilling to do because he wants that money.
For what? Like, that's
why
the point.
I really do enjoy when, like, a lot of governments do crack down on Amazon. I know for a fact that Germany has, because Germany has striking laws. You're
yeah.
allowed to strike every 3 years if you don't get a raise, or at least you don't get what your union asked. And Jeff Bezos is, like, heavily against unionization, but Germany's, if you are working somewhere, you have to unionize. It's one of their rules.
Nice.
And they automatically start striking there, and he tried to do the whole crackdown. And so here's the thing. Germany's smack in the middle of Europe. You can't not go through Germany. You'd have to go through the Alps then, which is, mountains. So he had to concede.
Yeah.
Once the German government stepped in, they're like, all right, if you close off Germany, you'd have to go through Italy, or you have to go
Right.
through Ship, which is owned by Denmark and Germany. And you're like, yeah, so then he basically got his arm twisted. So I know
Nice.
working in Amazon in Germany is quite nice,
Yeah.
but that doesn't translate to all the other Amazon places around the world. And
Yeah.
because you
Right.
can't unionize in the United States here for Amazon, it's basically like they can't even argue to get the same rights that they have in Germany, which is
Bonkers. That's just.
Is that what would you like to share specifically? What keeps you up about this topic?
what keeps me up about this topic.
Yeah.
This topic specifically, there's a lot of things.
Yeah. yeah.
Fair.
The primary thing that pisses me off a lot is out of sight, out of mind, really.
Yeah.
All these places are marketed as tourist locations. All these super high, like whenever you do go, it's like you said, you go on Instagram and you see people spend ridiculous amounts on purses or whatever, or when they spend ridiculous amounts on cars, or when they spend ridiculous amounts on houses, and they are owners of companies that do extremely unethical things, and you can't pin them down because they do use contractors and subcontractors, or they are fully within the legal rights of what they're doing by ensuring that all their workers are debt-ridden, so they can't even leave, and if they do complain, they can't do anything about it, so whistleblowing is out of question, essentially, because you will kill your family or yourself. So I think it's quite, and it's what messes me up, at least, is the fact that a lot of these things are out of sight and out of mind, and people know they exist, and you choose to ignore it. It really is that you go to you go on vacation to, like, countries that are known to be human rights abusers, and you are having fun and you're enjoying yourself, and then you promote that place.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't know if I could ever go on vacation to any of these places because I think I would probably have a fucking panic attack.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you think that, but tourists are treated extremely well. They're
I
treated
don't
better than
care.
they're treated at least on the level of the nationals, who are treated extremely well.
I will say, like, in defense of that, I think the only reason that any of us would feel bad about it is because we know.
Right,
So,
and
like,
a lot of people don't know.
right,
Sure.
and I also, if you think about it, if the people who can afford these places have never worked a day in their fucking life,
Yeah, that's
so they're
true.
like, I love it when people bring me mimosas to my room. Like,
Yeah, I'm not saying don't go on vacation there. I'm not saying any of
Yeah.
that. But I'm just saying there's the idea of
out of sight, out of mind.
if you're
And
going,
it's designed that way.
yeah, it is absolutely designed that way, and it's just I don't know how to put it. It's really is, if you want to build a jewel, you're going to have to
Build it on
have
the backs
somebody.
of others.
Not even that. You have to have somebody craft it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The person who makes something is like a craftsman is usually the poorest link in the entire chain. Yeah. So, and you have to come to terms with that and accept that. And if that's it, like really, I'm not going to blame anybody for going on vacation. I'm not going to blame anybody for having fun. I'm saying you should go do it, and if you can't afford it, you should go. However, don't be that person who supports it in the end of the day, like that, like the model who supported it.
Oh, the model who said like she'd
don't
be
make
losing her investment.
Yeah,
To know
don't make
about it and
excuses
then
for it.
still, oh
Yeah.
God.
And you know, at the end of the day, we'll close on some lyrics from a very applicable song.
Please don't do this.
Slaves built the pyramids. Slaves built the
I
Parthenon.
think we can get our
Slaves built America. Slaves, this is your song. Thank you, slaves.
Well, we're gonna get some letters about that. All right. It's been awesome.
If you could give us a like and review on iTunes, we would super appreciate it. It helps
be
with the
great.
business side of things. Seriously.
It does.
We have social media at ttkmeup.com. Oh, why do I always fucking do that?
I don't know.
It's at ttkmeup, and then we have a website, ttkmeup.com, where we've connected to our Patreon. Our social media is connected through all the social media, so you can follow us personally. We love interacting with you. It makes our day when we
also got
interact
2
with people.
comments on Podbean. That was kind of fun.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
cute. Thank you.
So we love connecting with y'all, and we're so happy that you like this, and we hope that you like this series. It was a fun experiment.
Fun?
Well, it was an experience.
It was, yes, it was that.
And we would love to hear some response on this, because this episode at the very least, we yelled for like 30 minutes.
There was a lot of yelling. Yeah.
If you have any personal experiences or you have your thoughts and opinions on anything, we'd love to hear it. Our next series is going to be on prisons.
Even though I already kind of did the prologue to it.
I need to figure out what I'm going to be doing. So,
Sorry.
It's okay.
prisons in South America.
Please.
Woof!
Oh, boy. Oh, God.
So we'll figure all that out. Any other closing remarks, Rutherford?
We love you so much.
It's been real. Do you
Drive
want to say
safe.
much? Do you want to say? Okay.
Drive safe. It's very important.
Drink
The
lots of
leading
water.
cause of death in the United States, other than heart attacks.
Hassan, why do you love being that way?
Thank you. We love you all. It's been real. Deuces.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.